Hey guys, I wanted to make this video to compare the screens on these two devices. On the left we've got the Nexus 7 2013, on the right we've got the iPad mini with Retina display. Now in terms of the specs, the Nexus 7 comes in with a 7-inch display with a resolution of 1920 by 1200. The iPad comes in with a 7.9-inch display with a resolution of 2048 by 1536. So the iPad mini does have a higher resolution screen, but it does also have a larger screen. So in terms of the pixels per inch, the PPI, the Nexus 7 comes in with a PPI of 323. The iPad mini comes in with a PPI of 324. So they are remarkably similar in the pixels per inch aspect. Yes, the iPad mini does have one extra pixel per inch, but you're really not going to notice that. So yeah, before we actually get into checking out some websites and the clarity, I just want to talk about the brightness for a second here. If we put both displays on the minimum brightness, and the iPad on the minimum, they're both really low, but I feel like, I don't know if this will come through on the camera, but I feel like the Nexus 7 is ever so slightly brighter on the minimum brightness. If we put them on the maximum brightness, again, they're both bright, but I feel like the Nexus 7 2013 is the brighter display. I haven't got anything like, major stats to back that up, but to me, looking at these screens in front of me, the Nexus 7 does look slightly brighter, so it may be better for your outdoor viewing. If we put these at around the same brightness level, I know this is kind of difficult to do because, they're different OSs and they do things differently. But if we put them around the same, about there, the Nexus 7 again feels a little bit brighter to me. So yeah, let's go ahead and load up some sites and see if we can see any difference in the clarity. Okay, so we've loaded up Android Central here, and in terms of looking at the text while it's not zoomed in anything, they both look very similar. They both look pretty sharp. I could still read this text even though it's very small on both. I can't see any pixels. If we zoom into some text here we go. Again, they both look super sharp. I can't see any jagged edges or any pixels anywhere. So being that the PPI is pretty similar, the actual sharpness of both of these screens is also pretty similar. So there really isn't a major advantage anyone has. Color reproduction wise, we'll zoom into this picture here. And obviously taking into account the aspect ratios are slightly different. Color reproduction, again, on both looks excellent. I really am finding it hard to tell much difference between them. Again, I think the Nexus 7 is slightly brighter than the iPad mini Retina, and again I've tried to put those at the same brightness. We saw the brightness test a little bit of a minute ago. It does look like the Nexus 7 is a slightly brighter screen, but the actual color reproduction is excellent on both. Okay, so we've loaded up this picture here, and again I've tried to put the brightness levels at the same sort of level. Again, it's difficult to do because they are different OSs and they kind of do it differently. So if we try and focus in on the color reproduction here, you'll see that the grass behind the horse, directly behind the horse, is a little bit greener, a little bit more vibrant on the Nexus 7 screen. It looks a little bit dull on the iPad screen. You can see that there. It just looks greener. Looking at the sky, they both look very similar. And again, both of these displays really do have awesome color reproduction, but I think I prefer the Nexus 7 from this image. I like that the grass is a little bit greener. It pops off the screen a little bit more, so that's kind of interesting right there. So I've loaded up another picture here to see if we can see any more notable differences between the two displays, but honestly, you're probably going to need a professional photographer to actually see which display is better or which one's got better contrast, because I'm really struggling here. You can definitely see there's slight differences in the display, but in all honesty, they are very similar. Both are super sharp. Both have very vibrant colors. The brightness, as I've been saying pretty much all video, I think I'm going to give to the Nexus 7. It is slightly brighter, and that makes the image pop a little bit more. But yeah, they are remarkably similar in terms of their color reproduction and screen clarity. So just as a quick test here, I thought I'd lower the Nexus 7's brightness to lower than what the iPad has, and you can see from the clouds at the bottom that they seem to be around a similar brightness level. Again, the colours do look slightly different on one, but the real difficult thing with this test was to actually get the brightness levels the same, because it really is difficult to do, because I think the Nexus 7 does have a naturally brighter screen than the iPad mini, even if it's just slight. You can see the difference in the sky colours here. Nexus 7 looks slightly darker, but then I did just decrease the brightness, so that probably explains that. And yes, this is the big bunny buck that we all love to play. Interesting note, the Nexus 7, I've just updated this to KitKat. It looks like the YouTube player lags a bit. It didn't used to do that before, so that is a KitKat issue. We're not looking at the frame rate between these, we're trying to look at the colors, so don't really take into account the frame rate issues right now. That is definitely software. So that's kind of, I'm going to try and pause these at the same time. So that's kind of interesting there. Again, I tried to set the brightness levels the same. I think the Nexus 7 is actually slightly below. You can see where that's set, and if we check out where the iPad is set, definitely higher. I mean, you can see that quite clearly right there. And if we look at this same shot, you can see more of the bear's arm in this shadow. So it definitely is a brighter screen over here. You can see that from that image, which play this a little bit longer. So I've tried to pause them at the same point again, and we're looking at the grass here. I can see a slight difference. The grass on the Nexus 7, it's hard to say, but the grass on the Nexus 7 looks slightly greener, looks slightly more green than the grass over here. I'm not sure which is more accurate or which is the right green, but that's what I'm noticing. Looks, I guess, maybe slightly more saturated over here, slightly more washed out, but it is really, really slight. Trying to hit play on these. Honestly, guys, these screens are both great, and the color reproduction is great on both as well. You won't be disappointed with either one, that's for sure. So there you have it, guys. If you were hoping to make a decision on which one to buy based on the screens, yeah, that's pretty much going to be impossible. Both of these screens are absolutely excellent. They have pretty much identical PPIs, so the sharpness level is the same, the color reproduction is the same. The only difference I could really tell is the Nexus 7 was slightly brighter, so you might get better use outside, but then don't forget the iPad mini has a different aspect ratio, so it's more going to come down to what you prefer over the hardware than which actual screen is downright better, because they're both very, very similar. So that's pretty awesome. Peace out.